Welcome to the Idaho High School Mock Trial Competition. We're excited to have your team participating.
I'm Carrie Shuffler, the director for Idaho's mock trial program. I want to remind everyone that our program philosophy is that this is an educational program first and a competition second. This is especially true at regionals. So be kind and gracious with everyone you encounter, including my staff and volunteers who have worked very hard to put this great experience together for you. A couple of notes about your arrival. Plan on arriving at about 8 o'clock and make sure that you know that the day goes until about 5:30 or 6 o'clock. You will receive a schedule for the day before your regional competition that you can pass out to team members and also any spectators. Once you go through security, there will be signs directing you where you need to assemble. Please limit what you bring into the courthouse. It will make getting through security a lot more smooth. Once you're in the staging area, a coach should come and turn in some materials to us that I'll cover in a minute, and then collect your team folders. This year, we have two separate daily sheets, one for the plaintiff and one for the defense. You'll need to fill out and turn in a copy of each form for each team from your school when you arrive at your competition. You'll also need to make an additional 4 copies of each form for your rounds. Remember, you give 1 copy of your daily sheet to opposing counsel and 1 copy to the presiding judge for each round of the competition. Each team member and coach needs to fill out and turn in a signed copy of the photo and video release form. Please note that each team member who is under 18 must also have the form signed by a parent or guardian.
Now let's cover the supplies that we will provide for you. You will receive timekeeping forms, which are covered in more detail in the timekeeper orientation.
We'll also give you peel and stick name tags and a couple of Sharpie pins. Remember, witnesses write the name of the witness they're portraying on their name tags, and everyone else, including attorneys, timekeepers, and courtroom artists, write their own names on their name tags.
We will also give you enough copies of the team-to-team, star, witness, and attorney certificates to cover each round of the competition.
And here are some other items that you will find in your packet. You'll receive a copy of the team pairings. You will also get a copy of the team exhibits. Remember, you cannot alter these exhibits in any way and must use the exhibits that we have provided for you during your rounds of competition. Finally, we will give you the judge panel listings so that you know who the judges are that you will be seeing during each round. If your team moves on to the state competition, please remember that there are some items in your packet that you will need to keep. First, you need to make sure you keep your timekeeping materials, including your time cards in your time card use table. Make sure you keep your copies of the exhibits and keep the Sharpie pins that we give to you. You will not be provided with new copies of any of these items or materials at your state competition. After you have checked in and gotten your materials, there will be a brief welcome, and then you can go to your assigned courtroom for your first round of competition. We could have staggered starts depending on when teams and judges arrive, but we'll do our best to keep to the schedule for the day. And please remind any spectators to arrive on time or maybe even a little early, since it's very disruptive to have people going in and out of the courtroom during a round. People who arrive late may have to wait until the next round before they get to see your team participate in a trial. Before the trial begins, there's a few housekeeping items that need to be taken care of. First of all, a reminder not to move things around in a courtroom without permission. We have to always remember that we're guests and people use these courtrooms on a daily basis, and they tend to get a little cranky if they feel like things have been moved around in their house. The plaintiff timekeeper will announce the case and introduce the judges, and the presiding judge will call the court to order. Once the judge has called the court to order, teams should introduce themselves and this is also the point at which teams should request permission to move about the well of the courtroom. Before the trial begins, the presiding judge will swear in all 6 witnesses at once. There's some things you need to keep in mind during the round. First of all, it's only okay to take pictures and videos by anyone other than staff if both teams agree to do so. If one team says they're not comfortable with pictures being taken or video being recorded, then that is just how it goes. We're asking teams to, during the round of competition, even if they are not even if they're just viewing the trial and not actually participating in it, to put away their phones and not have any texting. For several judges last year, it was very distracting to have people sitting and texting during the rounds, and they weren't sure who they were texting or what was going on. So just keep in mind that you could lose points if you're using your phone during the round, so please just don't do it. Make sure that you understand the unfair extrapolation rule. It's up to you as a team to object if you think the other team has pushed the envelope on that issue. However, judges are aware that this can be an issue and will likely deduct points if there is a team that abuses this particular rule. There's no costumes that witnesses can wear, but just keep in mind that accents aren't costumes, so if you want to use an accent for your character, that's fine. Remember that there's time limits for each part of the trial. Teams aren't required to use the entire time allotted for each part of the trial, but time remaining in one part of a trial cannot be transferred to another part of a trial. It's also important to note that there's no breaks. There's an optional 3-minute break before closing statements at the judge's discretion, but it's not to be requested. There's also no overtime. When the stop card is held up at the end of a segment of a trial, you must immediately finish your thought and stop talking. There's no 1 minute extra. There's no 30-second extra. Stop means stop. Points will be deducted if that rule is not followed. Here's a few reminders for after the trial. Once the judges have left the courtroom for their recess to fill out their score sheets, team members can communicate with coaches and spectators. During that time, the team should pick their choice from the other team for their Outstanding Witness and Attorney Award. And remember, coach, no helping, except for to remind them to do this. This is something that the team members should take care of on their own. Once the judges get back from recess, remember that the debrief is timed. There's 10 minutes total, not per judge, but total for all judges on the panel. And if the judges ignore this and start to go overtime, please feel free to send somebody from the courtroom to come and get us, and we'll come in and make sure things get wrapped up. And remember, the last thing before you leave the courtroom to go to your next round, make sure that you present your Outstanding Witness and Attorney Awards. And if you have been given any permission to move things around in the courtroom, make sure you put it back to the way it was, and make sure that you take all of your belongings with you. If your team thinks that there's been a rules violation during the round, staff needs to be told before the next round begins, or it won't be considered. Try to be reasonable about what you consider a violation. Sometimes newer teams just might need a reminder about how things work, and it doesn't need to go through a formal hearing process. Between rounds, make sure that you don't enter your next round courtroom unless you're sure that the previous occupants for that courtroom are finished. When you're in the public areas, keep noise in the open spaces to a minimum. Just sometimes the noise can get into a courtroom and be distracting. You have 45 minutes for lunch, but lunch isn't until 1:30, which is after round 2. So I suggest bringing some snacks with you. For the regional competition, teams will need to buy their own lunches. And Staff will be coming around to try to make sure that each team has a team picture taken. We try to send out information to local media outlets about the competition, and it's always nice to be able to have a picture as part of that.
After round 3, return to the gathering space where you were at the beginning of the day. We'll have a small awards ceremony and announce the Outstanding Witness and Attorney Awards that were chosen by the judging panels during the day. We'll also be announcing the teams moving on to the state competition. The number of teams that advance to state from each region depends on how many teams are participating from your region compared to the other regions, but you'll know before your regional competition how many teams will be qualifying. If for some reason your team knows they're not going to be able to compete at state, even if they qualify, please let me know before your regional competition. It'll save everyone a lot of heartbreak or confusion. And finally, before you leave, make sure your coach collects your team participation certificates and score sheets.
Just a few general reminders. There's no food or drink in the courtroom. And again, I know I've said this several times, but make sure that you pick up after yourself in the courtroom and keep the areas clean, including bathrooms, and keeping track of your belongings. Don't wander around the courthouse. Just stay in the designated areas. And lastly, make sure that your team members are wearing proper courtroom attire. We're not expecting people to wear suits, but blue jeans and t-shirts are not appropriate courtroom attire.
Again, welcome to the Idaho Mock Trial Competition. We're pleased to have you be part of our mock trial family, and I look forward to seeing you at your regional competition. If you have any questions, have your coach contact me.